Now, we all love a good Cinderella story in sports. It's what makes March Madness the greatest postseason sporting event of all time. And last year's Cincinnati team was a great example of that, being a group of 5 team taking on the big boys. Now, we all know they turned into a pumpkin the minute Bama ran out of the tunnel, but it was a good story nonetheless. Now, fast forward to 2022, and there's another candidate waiting to get that glass slipper. The Fresno State Bulldogs, baby. This team has the recipe to make a run. They have a chance to burst some of the biggest bubbles come college football playoff time. They have the experienced quarterback who's an absolute witch in Jake Haener. They return their most dynamic pass catchers in Jalen Cropper and Josh Kelly, throw in 3 offensive line starters back and a big-time Michigan State transfer in guard Jacob Isaiah, and the best offense in the Mountain West and one of the tops in the country is ready to go light bulb busting on the scoreboard one more time. The defense that only gave up 21 points a game last year returned 7 starters, including Ethan Williams, who's without a doubt the best safety in the Mountain West, in my opinion. But the most enticing thing about this team is that their schedule sets up for them to be able to sneak in if a lot of chaos happens. They're already receiving votes to be ranked in the polls, and they play Oregon State at home, which would be a nice win if they could hold serve. They play multiple teams on the cusp of being ranked in San Diego State and Boise State, and they have a huge matchup at USC. Sound familiar? The schedule plays out somewhat similarly to what Cincy had to go through last year. The only thing that gives me pause is that Cincinnati pretty much started the season in the top 10. That isn't to say if Fresno goes undefeated, they wouldn't shoot up the rankings, but they're going to need a lot more things to fall in place than Cincy did. Now, while I'm not ready to say they're going to make the playoff, if there's a team outside of that mainstream bubble that has all the pieces to do it, the players, the wily veteran coach and Jeff Tedford, and the schedule, it's Fresno State. Throw in Hogwarts grad Jake Haener, and this team's good enough to do it. I'm going to bring in my co-host my co-host David Cohn, and Mark Twain. And Mark Twain over here.
That's a compliment to me.
It is.
That's a compliment.
Congratulations.
Wow.
And
I really blew that one.
You know that Freudian slip from him is a compliment.
Has that ever happened? Has that ever happened before? Have I
It's
ever
a
done
first
that
for
before?
everything.
No.
There
First
is.
for everything.
Speaking of first for everything, look, it's a long shot. But if you were looking for a group of 5 team, because now Cincinnati, we know they're gonna transition and become Power 5 here soon. But if you're looking for a group of 5 team, I mean, Fresno State's got the whole recipe. And look, some people say BYU, all right, because again, they're independent. They are going to the Big 12. We know that, but not yet. But man, I feel like Fresno State, the schedule, we made the Goldilocks porridge reference yesterday. You know, some schedules are too hot, some are too cold. It feels like Fresno State's is just right.
I like this conversation. I like Fresno State. Obviously, Jake Haener is an incredible quarterback. You return that experience at that position, you're always going to have a shot to win a lot of football games. I think and Fresno State last year for me was not just a good team that won games. They were a great team that covered.
They covered a lot.
Covered a lot for us last fall.
Okay,
so that's what I'm really excited to see this year is if they can cover a lot of these spreads. To me, it's about USC. Okay, if you beat Southern Cal at their place, that's a huge win.
Huge.
Anytime, even when Southern California is down. But you need them to be pretty good if that's going to be a big enough win to get you into the playoff.
Like Notre Dame last year for Cincinnati.
Yes, it helped that Notre Dame was like really good after that loss, but since he started in the top 10. Fresno State would have to come all the way from outside the top 25 or from, what are they ranked right now?
I think they received like 25 votes or something.
Something like that, right? Yeah. Right outside. They'd have to climb all the way into the top 4. Not only do you need to beat Southern Cal, I feel like Southern Cal has to be fairly good in Lincoln Riley's first
year.
Yeah,
I mean, look, you've got to thread the needle. You have to have a lot of chaos happen in front of you. It would still be hard to leap a 1-loss SEC team, something like that. But again, if USC is good enough, if Oregon State is a team that's able to win 7, 8. That looks like a Power 5 bowl team. Looks like a good win. Boise State, we know they're always tough. They'll have a chance to be ranked. San Diego State, which got the new gig or the new setup over there, which is going to be fantastic for them. That schedule to me is good enough where it's as convincible as Cincinnati's was last year, but they do need help. They need a lot of help. I do like that Jeff Tedford, we know DeBoer went to Washington. Jake Haener almost went to Washington, a place he was at before he went to Fresno State. Almost went back there. Yeah, but he decided to stay. Jeff Tedford's had a couple of really good seasons at Fresno State, had one bad one, but he knows how to win there. He's back. It's his first year back. It's just Blaine, I'm looking at it. And again, Jake Haener, man, he's an NFL quarterback. Like, to me, he's a top 5 quarterback in the country.
If Fresno State gets in the playoff, I don't know. Things will burn down if Fresno State gets in the playoff, because it comes down to this: does an undefeated Fresno State team, get in over maybe a one-loss Big Ten team?
No.
No.
What about a two-loss SEC team?
Two-loss they get in over. If they go undefeated, a two-loss, depending
on who the loss is,
it's a
right?
lot. Well, again, just for example, I'm not saying this will happen, but if Auburn goes undefeated, or excuse me, not undefeated, they go 10-2 and they lose to Bama and Georgia, Fresno State, I think, still would get in over.
I would lose my mind
if they go undefeated.
And that team lost to Georgia. That team lost to Georgia and Bama. Mm-hmm. They would still get in over that team. And both those games were close.
So you're telling me that they'd put 3 SEC teams in? Alabama?
No.
Alabama. No. I'm asking you the question. Just answer the question. What I'm saying is, if Alabama runs the table, goes undefeated, goes to the SEC championship game, they beat Auburn. Georgia runs the table in the SEC, goes to the SEC championship. Auburn goes 10-2 in the regular season, loses to Georgia and Alabama, doesn't play in the SEC championship, and Fresno State goes undefeated. They will put Fresno State in front of Auburn. They will not put 3 SEC teams in the playoff. They're not going to do it.
Yep.
No, I agree with that, but I still think even a one-loss team will get over.
Okay, well, one loss, that's not the argument.
Well, I don't think it'll come down to a two-loss team, SEC team getting in on that extra spot. That'll come down to another one-loss team.
Well, why don't you go ahead and give us your underdog sleeper, because this plays into the conversation.
Yeah, mine's Tennessee.
Really?
Mine's Tennessee.
To make the playoff.
To make the playoff.
I like that. I don't mind that.
You look through
Tell them why. Look at the
There's no Ole Miss this year. You got no Ole Miss. And you go back and look at the games they lost. It was Florida. They lost to, I believe, Pittsburgh on the road. You got
Pittsburgh was at home.
At home. You got Pittsburgh this year on the road, but no Kenny Pickett, no Jordan Addison. I don't care. I know they brought a lot of starters back, but losing 2 guys like that, you're not going to replace that.
You're not high on Slovis?
You're not as high as Kenny Pickett. I'm thinking you get Hendon Hooker coming into his second year. You remember Hendon Hooker didn't start the season for Tennessee last year. Yep. That was Joe Milton. Yep. And Hendon Hooker only did what? Got better, and got better. And it's going to be the second year under his system. You lose Velus Jones to the draft, Alontae Taylor.
They got some guys out wide.
But with the system, they got Cedric Tillman, I believe, who's a 1,000-yard receiver. Big kid, 6'3", 220, physical guy. But the system Heupel runs almost forces receivers to be good. It really does, just the speed. And the defense will be the biggest question. It always is, because when you run an up-tempo offense like that, the depth of your defense has to be there. But you get Georgia on the road. All right, you get Bama at home, you get Florida at home, okay? You get Kentucky at home. Kentucky game can be a toss-up, but I think it'll come down to winning close games for Tennessee, all right? If you can beat Georgia. Okay, on the road, all right? Then it'll come down to Bama at home, and if you lose to Bama twice, so it'll be during the regular season and the SEC championship, then it comes down to the field.
Well, then Georgia would be sitting home saying, we only have
you go
one
back
loss.
to Georgia. You go back to Georgia's schedule. No, I wouldn't say that, because if Georgia loses to Kentucky on the road and Tennessee beats them, right?
That's a lot.
Then it comes down to a tiebreaker, and who would have that tiebreaker? That'd be Tennessee. But if you say you lose to Georgia, but beat Bama at home, and I know that's insane to say, but Bama slipped up last year against a team at Texas A&M who no one thought they were going to beat. So it is a possibility that Bama slips up on a game, and you win that game, and you lose to Georgia. And Georgia goes to the SEC championship. There's a one-loss Tennessee team.
Well, I think there's a lot higher probability, and I don't think it's going to happen. But if I had to pick between those 2 games, I think there's a lot better chance that Tennessee beats Alabama at home as opposed to Georgia on the road. Because where did A&M beat Bama last year? Mm-hmm. At home. I don't think you're going between the hedges with this team, even with what Georgia lost, but what they have on offense coming back, trying to stay healthy out wide. I don't think they go on the road to beat Georgia. The problem you are going to run into is, let's say you do beat Alabama at home. Say Alabama wins the rest of the games, they win the West, they go to the SEC championship. You lose to Georgia. Georgia goes to the SEC championship. They are still not, you would have to hope that Alabama would beat Georgia in the SEC championship because that would that Georgia would beat Alabama in the SEC championship because that would give Alabama 2 losses and Tennessee would have 1 loss and beat Alabama at home because they're not putting 3 SEC teams in. So it's not, I don't see a scenario in which it's Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. I don't think they will do that. But
I don't think so either.
If you're able, there's a path there. For sure. There is a path there.
And you look at those last 4 weeks of the season, I mean, you got South Carolina, Missouri, Vanderbilt, and someone else. If you get past that stretch, because it's going to be a tough stretch, because it's LSU, I believe Kentucky, Georgia, Bama.
I'll get my sleeper team in here right before we bring in Moscona. But the reason, like with Alabama in the West and Georgia in the East, I feel like it's going to be too difficult for that underdog sleeper to make the college football playoff from the SEC. That's why I was fully prepared to talk about NC State from the ACC today, or possibly Oklahoma State from the Big 12. But I'm actually going to go with Purdue. You and I both had them winning the West. Now let me break down why I think Purdue could possibly make the college football playoff. Obviously, you bring back a very experienced quarterback in Aiden O'Connell. 72% completion percentage last year, 3,700 yards, 28 TDs. Now, he threw 11 interceptions. That's too many. He has to bring that number down. But I think if he progresses as much from last season to this season as he did the year prior, I think that he's going to bring those numbers down. Purdue won 5 of their last 6 games last season, including a bowl win over Tennessee and a double-digit victory over Mississippi State. Now, let me get to the most convincing point here, which is their schedule this season. They open with Penn State, which is not the greatest crossover game from the East, but we have a lot of questions about Penn State. We have a lot of questions about Penn State, and you get them at home, and it's in a blackout at 8 p.m. Okay, so you do get them at home. Here's the rest of Purdue's schedule this season after Penn State. Indiana State, Syracuse, FAU, Minnesota, Maryland, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, Northwestern, and Indiana.
Wow.
Nobody.
Look at that schedule.
Now,
for everyone who says, okay, let's say you do run the table with an easy schedule like that, your reward is to go to Indianapolis and either play the Wolverines of Michigan or the Monstars of Ohio. Okay, I get that. That's going to be a tall task, but that's why we're talking about underdog teams.
You got to win it to get there.
Once you're in the conference championship, you can go win a football game with an experienced
quarterback. Do you think
quarterback.
Purdue gets in with one loss if they lose to, say, Ohio State or Michigan?
Way too early to talk about that just because we don't know what's going on around the rest of the country. But I think a one-loss Big Ten team has a stronger case than maybe a 2-loss SEC team, depending on how it shakes out, or even an undefeated FBS.
Especially if you won your division in the Big Ten.
So I don't know. I'm just looking here at this schedule. You beat Penn State at home, man. The schedule's looking good.
I like that pick, and I'll be honest with you, I put a decent amount of money on Purdue to win that division as well. But hey, if you like that content, go ahead and subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, String in a Cup. As long as you're listening, we appreciate you. Go subscribe now. It's Crane & Company.